Welcome to the Granny Square series. Today we're going to be learning to make this lovely daisy square. You can see it's raised, and this is the last square in the wildflower blanket, so now you'll have all the squares you need to make this cute blanket. So let's get started. For the center of the daisy, I'm using Buttermilk with a 4mm hook. And we're going to start with a double magic circle and chain 1. So the center of the daisy is made up of 6 3-loop puff stitches with a chain 2 space between each puff stitch. Yeah, so I'm going to make my first one with you. Sorry, I'm just getting tangled up there. So we've made our first chain. We're going to just make that loop a little bit bigger to the height of a US double UK treble. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull the yarn through. That's 1 loop. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull the yarn through. That's 2. And yarn over, insert the hook, pull through 3 times. And then we yarn over and pull through all the loops. Yeah, and then chain 2, and we're going to repeat 5 more times into the center of our double magic circle, and I'll see you at the end of the round. So I've just made number 6. I'm going to chain 2, and then we will pull the circle tight. So let's pull the tail end. See which loop tightens first, and then pull on that loop. Whoops. Make sure you don't get your tail caught up. Yeah, and then pull the tail to pull the second loop. And then we're going to slip stitch into the top of the first puff stitch to join. Yeah, and that's the end of round 1, the center of our daisy. 6 puff stitches with chain 2 spaces between each puff stitch. We're now going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of the next puff stitch. Chain 3, and slip stitch. Chain 3, and slip stitch into the top of the next puff stitch. Chain 3, and slip stitch into the next puff stitch. And we're going to go all the way around. Oops. There we go. And then back to the beginning, so slip stitch. And then we can cut the yarn. So I'm just going to chain 2 and then cut the yarn. Pull the hook through and then push the chains down. And that's how the center of your daisy should look. And we'll move on to the petals. So for the petal round, I'm using cream, and I'm going to make a slip knot. And then we're going to attach to the chain 2 space. So we're going to make our petals in these chain 2 spaces from round 1. And we're going to turn the chain 3 spaces down so that we can work on them later. Yeah, so just turn your chain 3 space back, and we're going to slip stitch into the chain 2 space. Pull the yarn through and slip stitch. So into each chain 2 space, we're going to make 8 stitches in total. Yeah, so we're going to start off by making a US single, UK double, and then we're going to make a US double, UK treble. And that's our repeat. We're going to do that 4 times into each chain 2 space. So we're going to make a US single, UK double, and then a US double, UK treble. So that's twice. Then we're going to make a US single, UK double, and a US double, UK treble. That's 3 times, and then once more a US double, US single, UK double, sorry, and then a US double, UK treble. So that's a total of 8 stitches with 4 repeats of the little stitch and then the bigger stitch. So then we turn the next chain 3 space back so that we can work into the chain 2 space, and we do the same repeat. Yeah, so I'm going to leave you to do each petal. You can pause the video, and I'll see you at the end of the round. I'm just making my last stitch now, so you should finish with a US double, UK treble, and then we're just going to slip stitch into the first stitch to join. Yeah, and then chain 2 and cut the yarn. And there's our daisy. It's cute, isn't it? And then if you turn the daisy over, ignore all my ends, but we should have all these chain 3 spaces tucked behind, ready to work in. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do now. We're going to add some leaves underneath our daisy. Using pistachio, we're going to make a slip knot, and we're going to be working in the chain 3 spaces behind. So make sure the right side of your work is facing you, and we're just going to turn the petal down so that we can work into that chain 3 space. Yeah, so we're going to slip stitch, and then chain 2. So the repeat is the same for each chain 3 space. We're going to make a 2-stitch cluster using US doubles, UK trebles, chain 1, and then make another 2-stitch cluster using US doubles, UK trebles, chain 1. We then hop across to the next chain 3 space, and we repeat. Oops. Make sure you don't get caught up with all those tail ends, yeah? So 2-stitch cluster, chain 1, and another 2-stitch cluster. And we're going to go all the way around so that we have 12 clusters and 12 chain spaces. I'll see you at the end of the round. I've just made my last cluster, and now I'm going to slip stitch into the first cluster we made to join, and then I'm going to slip stitch across into the chain space. So that's the end of that round. And you can't really see the petals because the flower sits on top. So we're going to be using the same colour for the next round. We're going to chain 1, and we start in the, we're now squaring our motif. So we start in the middle, the edge, along the middle of the edge. Yeah, we're going to make a US single, UK double, chain 2. So that's in between the stitch. Yeah, We're now going to skip that stitch, skip the next chain space, and then we're going to work into the next cluster. We're going to make a 2-stitch cluster. Chain 3. Oops. And then we're going to make another 2-stitch cluster into that stitch. So this is our corner. And chain 2. Yeah, we're now going to miss the next chain space and go into the second chain space. Yeah, we're just going to make a US single, UK double, and chain 2, and that's our repeat. So we're going to make the next corner now. We're going to skip the first cluster and work into the second cluster. We make a 2-stitch cluster, chain 3, and then another 2-stitch cluster into the same stitch. After making the second corner, chain 2, we skip the first chain space, and then working into the second one, we make a US single, UK double, and you can see we've made half of our square now. So I'm going to finish this round and I'll see you at the end. You can pause the video or rewind and watch that half again and make along. And after making your 4th corner, we're just going to chain 2 and then slip stitch into the first stitch. And then I'm going to change colour, so I'm going to chain 2 and cut the yarn. So the important thing to remember with that last round is that the edges are worked into the chain spaces and the corners are worked into the stitch. Yeah. So for the next round, you can use this stone colour if you're making the wildflower blanket. I'm going to be using the meadow because I want a bit of a variety with my daisies on this blanket. So using the meadow, I'm going to make a slip knot. And we're going to attach to one of the chain spaces. Yeah, so I'm just going to go in here just before that US single, UK double, and slip stitch. Just pull that tight. There we go. So this round we're making, I've got that caught there, let me just pull that out. This round we're making a granny square round, so however you like to make your starting stitch, a US double, UK treble, and then we're going to make another US double, UK treble into that same chain space. We're then going to hop across and into the next chain space. We're going to make 3 stitches. So it's all US doubles, UK trebles for this round, yeah? After your 3 stitches, we're in the corner, we're going to make 3 stitches. Chain 2 or chain 1 if you prefer, and then 3 more stitches into the corner. So we're going to go all the way around like so, 3 stitches into each chain 2 space, and then 3 stitches, chain 2, 3 stitches in the corner, and I'll see you back at the end of the round. I'm just making my last stitch in that corner, and then I'm back to where we started. And if you remember, we only made 2 stitches at the beginning, so I'm going to go in and make the 3rd stitch of that chain 2 space, and then slip stitch to join, and that's the end of the at the end of that round. I'm going to add it to my wildflower blanket, so I'm going to add a round of US singles, UK doubles in stone to add on to this blanket. But if you're using it in a different blanket from the 4x4 Granny Square series, then you might want to leave it there. And I'll see you in the next video.